Good evening, everybody. It's exactly 6:50 p.m. and I had the opportunity to visit the Mount Wilson Observatory, which you see in this photograph, and that's based near Los Angeles in the US. And you might be wondering, why did I go there? I was selected to attend a consortium in undergraduate research and education in astronomy. It's often called as CUREA. It's been running since the past 20 years now. And there are about 7 to 8 students who are normally selected every year, and I was one of them this year to go and attend it. So the age group is not really defined, it's more at the undergraduate level. So if you're an undergraduate student, preferably in physics or engineering, such kind of internships are offered. So just to give you, the basis for selection is your application essay. That is, why do you want to go to CUREA and what is it that you're going to earn out of it? Or what are your interests, what have you done in the past which is going to be helpful for you in CUREA or to explore new things. What I wrote was, one point which I wrote was that since I'm an engineering student, I'm an electronics engineering student, I would love to explore the techniques of instrumentation which are coupled in research, because research would definitely need a lot of experimental people to develop instruments to get that particular data. So I learned a lot of instrumentation. My project which I did here was in fact an instrumentation based project. So that is one. Secondly, it's a reference letter, recommendation letter by your college teacher who has taught you both experimental, practical sessions and theoretical sessions in physics. And finally, your curriculum writing. So curriculum writing, CV. So if you see, this is the Mount Wilson Observatory. You can see that it's all situated on a mountain. And is it visible to all of us? Yeah, just tell me if it's not, so that I can come closer if you want to. And those are some of the domes, telescope domes. That's a solar tower there, and it's about 35 kilometers away from the main city of Los Angeles. So it takes around about 35 to 40 minutes to reach the observatory one from Pasadena, which is also a close town near Los Angeles, and it's at an altitude of about 5,000 feet, so it's close to about 1.6 kilometers, which is not much. But the interesting fact about this observatory or this location is that it was built by a famous astronomer whose name is George Ellery Hale, and George Ellery Hale from his childhood was groomed. He was groomed by his father. His father was an extremely rich person, and his father used to tell him that if you want pocket money to do some science experiment, he was extremely interested in science. He said, you should write down a project proposal for that. I mean, I'm your father, that's all right, but you should write down the proposal which indicates why do you want to do this particular project and why do you need so much money, and then you'll grant it. And that practice made George Ellery Hale so seasoned in this kind of context that he eventually started building observatories all across the US. So this was one of the observatories which he founded in the 1900s, early 1900s, and that is what it is famous for. Can you see a fog layer down the city? This is taken from a mountain. Can you see a small kind of fog layer out here? That's what is called as an inversion layer, which is particularly formed near the oceanic regions. Los Angeles is very close to the ocean, so as you go up in elevation, actually our air becomes much steady, and all the smoke particles or whatever that is dusty, all that is found at the lower level or at the lower altitude. So you have clear air. In terms of astronomy, those who are used to these terms, the seeing is very good at this place, or it was very good. Why I say it was very good? Because the city of lights, that's Los Angeles, it developed in the past 100 years, and you can see this photograph now that's taken at night, and those lights are from the city of Los Angeles. So they have an extreme light pollution which has hampered the nice dark skies of Mount Wilson. So there's not much practical observational optical research which is being done, but they are still working a lot on their interferometry, which is one of the best interferometry instruments they have. That's the CHARA instrument which they have. And this is the monastery in which we stayed. That's the only place where visitors or visiting astronomers at Mount Wilson can stay. So this is the same place where Albert Einstein had also stayed. Albert Einstein had also was given a room. And the interesting part about this monastery where we stayed was that there's an organization called as OSHA. I think that's how it's pronounced in the US, which defines some safety standards. So according to OSHA, these buildings are no more approved in the US. So if such buildings are found in the US, they are not allowed to be constructed. But because this is such an historical site, OSHA did allow them to continue. So the stairs which they had, they were uneven. So they were not level. So they were extremely steep, and at the same time the distance between two consecutive stairs was never constant. So you have to be very careful while going up and especially while coming down. So that's the library and the Ursa Major constellation. I don't think it will be very much visible right now to you, but you want me to push it down? Okay, is it good? Yeah. So that's the library which you see out there in this that small house which you see. So that was my first night at the Mount Wilson Observatory. And incidentally, when I reached Mount Wilson, they asked me, "You must be very sleepy, so you must go and probably get some rest." But I said that no, I have come from India, so by the time it's night here, it's already daytime there. So my jet lag's already worked in the daytime, so I'm all right to work at night. So right from the first day itself, I started working there and did some astrophotography. And that's the library in which we used to spend most of our time. Our daily routine was, we used to wake up at about 6:30, 7 o'clock, immediately make our own food, make our own breakfast, go for solar lectures, then followed by some nighttime lectures inside the library, then some practical sessions on solar observations. That's at the solar telescope, which I'm going to show you now. And then followed by dinner at 6:30 p.m. 6:30 p.m. watch the sunset and have dinner. That's what the concept there was. And then again from 8:30, when there's sunset, you start observing till about 3:30 at night. So that duration between 3:30 in the night and 7 in the morning was the only time when I was seen at the monastery. So the rest of the time you were all awake. So they said that if you're in CUREA, you're not allowed to sleep. And that was Professor John Warsick. He was our solar lecturer. He was from the Big Bear Solar Observatory. He was a scientist at the Big Bear Solar Observatory, and he taught us a lot about how observations of the sun were made using diffraction gratings right from the historical times of 1920s, and how the solar field evolved over a period of time. And that's in fact our team in the library. You can see the international students which were there were me. I was the only one from India. There was Ibrahim from Afghanistan. Where's Ibrahim? Ibrahim is here. And there was Natalie. This was, I think, Jacqueline. She was from Brazil, and the remaining were from the US. And this man here, his name is Yunus Bakshi, and he is actually the first. He's actually one of the founders of the first astronomical club, just like Akash Mitra in Afghanistan. And it was really interesting to see how even in a place like Afghanistan, which is actually really beautiful for astronomy, people now have started taking such clubs into such a territory, which is, you know what I mean. So then this was, everybody remembers this picture. You have seen it somewhere or the other. It's Albert Einstein, and probably those who have done some theoretical physics might know what he is trying to write on the board. But just as a random guess, do you know where this photograph was taken from?
It's Monastery.
It was the same place. So nobody mentions that this photograph was taken at Mount Wilson, but Einstein had visited Mount Wilson, and in fact Einstein was a great believer in theory. So he was a pure theoretical believer, and when he came to Mount Wilson Observatory, he really realized how important experimentation was, and he had in fact asked George Ellery Hale that is it possible to observe some stars during the daytime. He wanted to observe some stars closer to the sun, or when they look closer to the sun. And George Ellery Hale said to him that no, it's not possible, but we could try doing that experiment during a solar eclipse. And I'm not so sure whether this is right, but I think that those observations were related to his theory of general relativity. I think general relativity was proposed during 1916 to 1920, and then I think the theory of special relativity. So, oh, special was before.
Special.
Okay.
Special was 1905, general was 15.
Okay. So, that's the 60-inch telescope which is present. That's the diameter of the mirror of the telescope is 60 inches. And you can just compare a man as tall as me and how huge that telescope structure is. And believe me, this is just the 60-inch, the 100-inch is yet to come. But just to give others a context, those who are new to astronomy, this is an 8-inch telescope I have at my home. And most of the times I used to tend to call it a giant telescope, a big telescope. But the entire concept of the scale of giant and big, was totally thrashed when I went and saw the 60-inch telescope, and that's how it was. Is it visible to everyone? This is 60 inches.
60
And is it visible to everyone?
Yes.
Yep. So you can see that there's a huge cage out there within which the mirrors have been assembled, and it's scary at first thought to see that entire cage moving. It's just moving. It's tons of kilograms, and yet to see it moving so perfectly by just at the control of a computer, it's scary as well as exciting. And it is so big that you need a staircase to go and see through the eyepiece. So this is the staircase on which I'm standing, and that's the eyepiece through which I'm looking. So those are the kind of different, that's how telescopes change when you go at that kind of level in telescopes. And that small little hut you see, that's the Galley. That's one of the favorite places on the monastery, because that's the only place where you are allowed to have food. So George Hale, he was very much concerned about the safety of the telescopes and the observatories on the mountain, because the mountain is home to a lot of natural habitat. So you might find bears, deers, squirrels everywhere. And incidentally, one day it so happened that this window of the Galley was left open, and the bear actually attacked the Galley right from this window. He entered the Galley from this small window, and he had created havoc all throughout the all on Mount Wilson. So yeah, they had a very strict rule that all your dinner, food, whatever you wanted to make, that would happen only in this Galley. And in fact, we were not there on just an internship, but we had to also prepare our own breakfast and lunch. And yeah, that's the fridge which we were given. So it had food for 14 days. So whatever you want, you can prepare from that. Whatever was available. You could also write some requests if you had. So if anyone's going down the mountain, they could bring food for you. And there, obviously, the dinner was made by our director, Dr. Paula Turner. She was really like a mother out there, and she, after managing the night time and the daytime, she did make out time for preparing dinner for all of us. So that was a really, really nice gesture on her part. And this bridge which you see, right, if you go from the Galley, you go ahead. And if I can show you that photograph again. So you walk down this road, and this is a small bridge you see, and that's the 100-inch telescope out there. And this bridge is famous for one reason, that this is the same place where Albert Einstein and Edwin Hubble had taken their photograph when they had visited Mount Wilson. And you can see that this tree out there, it's pretty much there in the previous photograph as well, but all these are new structures. So in the past 100 years, a lot of things around Mount Wilson around that observatory have changed. But one thing which has remained constant is that nobody can have food inside the observatory. So if you want to have food, be it your nighttime coffee, you have to walk down the bridge, go to the Galley, prepare it, have it there, and then again come back. So that was a discipline which is still incorporated by scientists who come there. And so did we have to.
So is that a concern that if someone litters around the telescope, so that might actually end up somewhere near the periphery of the region where you're operating?
More than the periphery of the region, it might call unwanted animals to that place. So
how do you see, like, animals can come in as and as when they want, right? So how do you safeguard the entire thing?
There's no safeguard mechanism as such, but one more important concern is that, as you know, California is home to a lot of forest fires. So a lot of people, when many of the times you carry your lighters or some cooking material which you want, and by chance, even if there's a cigarette which falls onto that area, it can lead to disastrous fires. And in fact, 3 years back there was a major fire, and 3 firefighters actually lost their lives just protecting this entire region. So as far as security is concerned, there's very less security for protecting anything if such a thing happens, but inside it's well secured. So whatever instruments are inside, if it's covered properly, yes, there's perfect security from within. But yes, you've got to be careful, and that is one discipline which I think was really important, because frankly, you don't want to leave your concentration away from your observations when you're using such a wonderful telescope on other things. So it's better to keep that place just for what it is meant. That is inside the 100-inch telescope, and do you see a chair there?
Yeah.
Do you see a small chair? So that's the chair on which actually Edwin Hubble sat and did his observations. So do you see the chair? So this is the place, that's the chair on which Edwin Hubble sat, and they believe that that's the chair on which he sat and did his observations to prove that the universe was expanding. That's just let's say a souvenir which has been kept there. But interestingly, when you go inside the dome, when you go inside, it's a lot similar to what you have seen in India. Like many of us have visited the Galley Observatory, and when I went in there, I saw that there were so many similarities. That is, similarity in terms of the sidereal clocks which are kept. I think Abha had given a talk in February or March on the sidereal time system, which is incorporated by astronomers, and which probably I think was the best talk of this year. And what I wanted to show you from this, what I wanted to really show you is $1 million photograph. These are the photographic plates which Edwin Hubble used to actually prove that the universe was expanding. So, not all of them, but some of these are those Cepheid variables and the photographic plates on which he had captured those photographs. And probably this is M13, the famous cluster, which is the famous, I think, a globular cluster. So that's M13, and that's a comet. So it was this was actually brought just for us.
That's the Halley's comet?
Sorry?
That's the Halley's comet?
I'm not so sure whether it was the Halley's comet. It was not written anything on it. So interestingly, the Carnegie Observatories, the Carnegie Society, they keep stock of these photographic plates, and there were scientists who had just come to show us those kind of plates. And along with this, there were also plates of the first light, which they say the first photograph taken using the 100-inch telescope that was of the moon. And they also have those plates still with them, and they are still kept in their laboratories or in their safe places where they would remain like that forever. And it was simply amazing to see that I was actually reading those same things which someone like Edwin Hubble had written on photographic plates, and those things are still visible. And that's me with Mike Symons. Many of you who are in Akashmitra since a long time might have heard about Mike Symons. Mike Symons is he's an astronomer in the US. He's also right now working very, very hard on Astronomers Without Borders, which is an international organization in astronomy. And he also was one of our instructors who actually helped us out on both the night side as well as the solar side. And that behind me is the 100-inch telescope. So if you can, is it visible? So this is the mount on which it is kept. So I have not got those photographs in the pit, but actually Mike took us down to the pit and actually showed us how big those gears and how big those shafts were, which actually rotated this entire thing without any problem. And that's what I really loved. That's what was something that was really close to my heart. This is the Pacific time, that's the sidereal time, and that's the universal time clock. So 3 different clocks, and most important for any observational astronomer is this sidereal clock. And that is something I had not seen anywhere else in India, or probably I had not paid attention then when I had seen them. But last year when I started seeing what sidereal time is, I was really amazed to see something like that. And then Mike and I, we were having a candid discussion during our 100-inch night or 60-inch night, and we decided, okay, let's try and calculate the sidereal time orally. Let's not go and see what it is right now. Let's just try and calculate it orally, right from the basic concepts of vernal equinox to. So I remembered Abha a lot that day when because she had really explained us that topic very well. And we were right. So when we checked it out with the Sidereal Time, we indeed were right. And then Mike said that just calls for some celebration. So again, the celebration happens at the Galley. I'll show you some photographs of that. And well, that's some nature I was talking about. So it's a squirrel out there. You'll find lots of them. Can you see? Yeah. And you might even find some like these inside the library. That's the director's dog, Nutmeg. The reason why I'm showing you these kind of creatures is that at night the observatory does not allow any lights. So the mountain is also home to rattlesnakes. So when you're walking at night, it's preferable to have some animal with you. It's preferable to, that's not the only reason why they have, but it's always preferable to keep some animals who can alert you if there's some creature close by. So that was about the night side, and then this is the solar tower. There's a 150-foot solar tower, and again, this is also not approved by OSHA. So they say that if you want to go up, only 2 people on the mountain are authorized to go in that lift, which goes right from here right to the top, 150 feet high, and only they are authorized to operate that lift. So you want to go up and do something, only those 2 people are authorized to do that. And the interesting part about this is that we were actually taken down to the main office, or the main room, in which we could see the sunspots on the sun and see how they were actually analyzing them. They actually had, like you have a coordinate system for your Earth, they also have a coordinate system for Sun. And they were drawing those sunspots, and then they were sharing it just in front of us with every other observatory in the US who were trying to observe that particular sunspot. When we went there was an active sunspot which was present on the surface of the sun. And observations of these sunspots actually are really helpful to find out, say for example, the Symons splitting. I don't know how many of you have heard of it, but there's a concept called as Symons splitting, which is observed in strong magnetic regions. And actually students in CUREA did some of those observations and did find out the Symons splitting in some spectral lines. So this was one of the first solar telescopes in the world. That's the 24-inch snow solar telescope. And you can see Einstein is here with that same Sirius-Sat mirror as you see in these images. And the interesting part about this telescope is that these do not focus. The focusing mirror is kept inside a small, inside a big room. So actually, when you go into this snow solar telescope, you go inside the telescope. So that these mirrors are bringing the rays out from the atmosphere. They are putting it. Suppose I keep the primary mirror out there. That primary mirror reflects it back onto a secondary, which is kept somewhere here, which again sends it down to the diffraction grating down in a pit. So we were actually inside the snow telescope, and Mike Symons had given us an orientation to find out, to actually first see how to open the snow solar telescope. And it's a very old technology. So it's got to do with a lot of hand power, muscle power to open up the. Okay, so you have to open up the shed in which it is kept by using levers and a lot of Allen keys, and then assemble it manually. Most of this is done manually, and then turn on a motor which will be tracking the sun. And that process was so amazing that we did it just every morning and every evening. So we weren't really bothered about sleep. We really wanted to come and open up the telescope, set it up. I think it was a great joy, because to go inside something that huge and doing something which people had been doing for the past 100 years was simply amazing. And it was a privilege to do that. It was a privilege by all the instructors at CUREA to allow us and trust us that we can do it once they had taught us. So that's one more solar instructor. Her name was Sarah Martin. And Sarah Martin actually knows a lot of people in India. She had also visited the Udaipur Solar Observatory, and she knows people such as Dr. Nandita Srivastava or Dr. Arvind Bhatnagar in India who have been on the solar side. And she was simply an amazing woman I had met, one of the best women to keep as an I would worship her in one way, because there was lots to learn from her, not just on the solar side, but even on how you can be a good human being. from her as well as Dr. Paula Turner, and it was simply amazing to work with her. And that's a photograph of the sun taken using the H-alpha filter. That's a prominence. You can see some prominences on this edge, and that telescope I think is a Lunt telescope. So using that telescope you can get such images in the H-alpha region. So how many of you know the H-alpha? I've heard about H-alpha region. 656 nanometers wavelength. Yeah. So at that wavelength, all other wavelengths of light in the spectrum are blocked except for that particular wavelength. So you observe the sun at that particular wavelength and see its characteristics then. So that was on the solar side, but my main work was on the 16-inch telescope. That is, they have a 16-inch Meade Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, and that is actually meant for CUREA. So the students who come there, probably they want to do their projects, they are done only using this telescope, and that's the dome behind it. That's the telescope from within, and that's the small computer which is kept, which has been running right from 2005 I think, and which has not changed, so it still has XP. And all your telescope observations, be it determining asteroids' rotation rate, was still performed using that particular instrument kept there. So actually one of our old members, Kshitija Deshpande, when she was also in her first year in 2005, she had visited Mount Wilson on a similar for CUREA, and since then the director told me that even Kshitija had used such kind of instrument then, so it has not changed much. But interestingly, now this is the Ring Nebula in the constellation of Lyra. That's how the Ring Nebula looks like. You can see there are two quasars in fact inside. You can see one of them that's right at the center from the 60-inch telescope, with visually, I'm not joking, in averted vision. And in fact here there are two here, and I think this is an image I have taken from Google, and we were trying to photograph that. We were being taught LRGB imaging, that is luminance red, green, blue imaging. That is, you take images of the same astronomical object using different filters, and then combine them using a combination technique called as LRGB imaging.
What is the exposure time for each?
It was, if I'm not wrong, it was 60 seconds. 60 seconds. And this is one of the photographs which we had taken on the night time. This was during the first week of the program, when everybody got chance to come up to the observatory, first learn how a telescope operates. That is, most of us know how to use the viewfinder, and things are just the same out there as well. They also have a viewfinder, a telrad, and we should learn how. The first basics to be learned are which way your telescope dome is going to rotate, or if I just give you the right ascension and declination of your star or of your astronomical object you want to observe, you must be able to determine where exactly your telescope should slew once it is pointing there. Why? Because if the telescope moves by chance in the wrong direction, you might risk to damage the entire telescope. So you must be very perfect with your back of the mind calculations before you can proceed to doing those observations. And this is a photograph of the Ring Nebula. You can see that the left one doesn't look much processed. You can see some greenish tint out here, but after processing, you can actually see the quasar which we saw in the previous image right at the center. You can't see the second quasar, but the first quasar is still visible in this Ring Nebula. So we were taught these basic concepts of image processing using software such as AutoStar IP or Maxim DL, and it was the basic mistake which I learned, which I was doing out here, is that we use something called as dark frame subtraction. I think most of you have heard about this. In astrophotography, sometimes you take some dark frames. That is, you put the camera lens on your lens cover on your lens, and then take some photographs at the same exposure, and then you subtract the dark current or the noise from the original science images you have. But that is what we call here as dark calibration, but that's not what calibration is. Calibration is actually matching your instrument to a standard value. So what you actually do is noise reduction. So that's the project which I'm coming to. That's the CCD camera attached to the telescope, and it does take time and a lot of careful attention while you're attaching such a instrument to a telescope. And I don't know, but did Ayuka have ST8? ST6, okay, so this was ST8, and I had seen this CCD before, but I never got a chance to use it. So when I was using it, they had really given me a very good tutorial on the first or second night on what a CCD is and how it functions. So on Saturday of the first week, we had a project roundtable discussion in which all the instructors and all participants sat in a circle in the library and discussed what are the potential projects which everyone can do, either in groups of 2 or individually. And there were lots of projects which were coming up. They told us which projects had been performed earlier in CUREA, which are possible, which may not be possible. But one really good thing which I learned was how to write your project proposal. That is, what people would see, what would they expect to see in your project proposal. When you write a project proposal, maybe for your PhD or for your thesis or in your college or any other project, you need to say that why is it that you want to observe this particular object, why is it that you need, or how much time do you need to observe it. For example, my project was the instrumental characteristics of a CCD camera. So I asked for three nights on the 16-inch telescope, and about 3 to 4 hours per night was sufficient enough for me to get the data. And it was a really fantastic discussion which we had, which involved a lot of past experiences, not only of CUREA students who had come before, but also of the instructors who had written proposals in their lifetime for their PhD thesis or for various other professional reasons. And they said that within 200 words or 250 words, you should be able to convince the person who is going to review your proposal that yes, this project can be done and this is what you want to do. So we were given about 8 hours of time to decide on a project, and you might be thinking why I did that project, why not observe something like a variable star or observe Zeeman splitting.